Orders she won't obey. Previous episodes are available on playlist, a link is given in the video description. Episode 3. Chapter 24. Mason rolled over and did push ups on the floor. I lay on his bed and watched him. After he finished working out, he made 2 bowls of cereal and gave me one. He then lay down on the bottom of his bed. I hope it's okay that I let you stay here last night. You fell asleep on the couch, so I put you to bed. He said this while shoveling cornflakes into his mouth. I nodded eagerly. Good food. Bed is good. Business? Debatable. I got him to laugh. You're not going to make me do the general's stupid punishments, are you? He tipped the bowl to his mouth and drank the milk. Then he looked over the porcelain and smiled. You need to learn to behave, Rivers, and you're not ready for the fitness test yet. You can't lose. You fail, and you're done. I don't think I'll ever learn how to act, I said. He stood up and grabbed his toothbrush from the sink, putting a blob of toothpaste on it. You're right, he said before brushing his teeth. I got out of bed and put my bowl in the wash basin. Then I watched him make his teeth shine. I bumped him out of the way with my hip after he was done and took his toothbrush. I put more toothpaste on it and brushed my own teeth. This time he looked at me and I could tell he was having fun, but he tried to look mad about it. I need to take a shower, and you need to get dressed. What will you say to your roommates when they ask where you are? He began to make his bed, pulling it so tight that there was no room for error. I'll tell them I'm sleeping with the lieutenant and that I spent the night at his place making mad passionate love. He dropped his pillow. What? He screamed with all his might. As soon as I started laughing, he calmed down. I'll tell them I'm messing around with one of the generals. They'll believe it, it happens all the time. I walked over to the bed and watched his face screw up in annoyance because he couldn't quite get the sheet straight on the right-hand corner. It does? Which ones? Who? He asked in disbelief. I laughed and said, I'm not a narc. He kept pulling the bed sheet straight because he wanted to make his dad happy, even though he wasn't there. He ran his hand over the flat surface to get rid of any bumps in the material. Mason. He looked up from the sheets on the bed. I pulled the whole duvet back by the edge, ruining all of his work. He stared at me, not understanding what had just happened. I sucked in my lips to hide my smile. The look of pure confusion on his face made me laugh so hard. It doesn't have to be perfect just because he says it does. Just do something wrong for once in your life, you'll feel good about it. Leave it a mess. He immediately started to straighten the sheets again. Riley, get out of here. You're a bad influence. He joked and waved me away with his hands. He watched me walk across his living space and out the door. Oh, and by the way, you're doing the general's extra punishments, he told me. I groaned and gave him the middle finger without turning around. Now you've added 3 more. He yelled at me, and I left him with just the sound of his door slamming. My arms hurt, my fingers were stiff, my legs didn't feel like they were part of my body anymore, I had bruises and cuts, my clothes were dirty, and I'm pretty sure some of my bones were broken. Yes, Lieutenant Arsehole made me do the general's punishments, and I think he liked it. I stood in line for my plate of slop. I will never understand how everyone eats this junk. The kitchen staff filled my plate, and I moved on, looking for my friends in the cafeteria. That looks really good. I think I'll get a pizza for myself tonight. 2 pepperonis and extra cheese. Maybe I'll get a cake on the side, Mason's voice teased from behind me. I hate you, I said quietly as I looked down at my unappetizing plate. Did you make your bed this morning? He straightened his lips to keep from smiling. I'm not going to talk to you about my personal business, Rivers, he said in his lieutenant voice. Oh, you coward. He laughed, but then he quickly remembered himself and stopped. I sat down next to Amber, Maddie, Sierra, Raven, and Jake. They talked about X, which is what they always talk about, and I just played with the mush in front of me. I looked over at Mason and my heart skipped a beat when I saw that he was looking right at me. I shook my head at him in amusement and smiled. He bit his lip to stop himself from smiling, because God forbid he show any real happiness on his face. The kitchen alarm went off, and within seconds, the sprinklers in the ceiling began to pour cold water. At first, everyone in the room was quiet for a moment, and then there was movement and even some loud screams. I looked up at the sprinkler above my head and smiled. Yeah! I yelled, throwing my arms up in the air. I took a cup that was full of water and poured it over Jake's head. He got up and grabbed an empty tray. He pulled it back at the top and let it go, which made it ping in my direction and spray water all over me. Within seconds, the whole cafeteria was in a water fight. The officers who stood at attention around the room looked at each other with blank stares, not knowing what to do. It was clear that they were waiting for Mason to give them orders. He watched me closely, weighing whether to end this or let it go on. I picked up my tray and waved it around in the air, splashing Jake with all the water. Then, as he tried to throw another cup of water over my head, I ran away. I picked up the closest cup, held it under the sprinkler for a few seconds to fill it, and then threw it right in Mason's face. I thought the room had stopped fighting and was now waiting to see how he would react. Everyone who was paying attention held their breath and prayed to God for forgiveness. Mason stood still while the water dripped down his skin. Then he slowly wiped his face. His eyes were dangerously hooked into mine. The irises of his eyes darkened, a million shades of brown mixing together, with the threat and promise of grave danger. There was more silence in the room, and most of the people who were fighting stopped to see how he would react. I slowly backed away from his intimidation, never taking my eyes off of his. But then he suddenly moved and grabbed a full salad bowl and tipped it over my head. I screamed as cold water ran down my back and stuck to my skin. Mason laughed loudly, so I picked up a tray and sprayed him with the water. Not only the recruits were laughing in the cafeteria, but also the officers. Mason's joining in gave the staff the go-ahead to keep going. People were standing on tables, sliding across the floor, and holding other people hostage right under the sprinklers. It was honestly the most fun I've had since I got here. The alarm stopped ringing, and the water from the sprinklers stopped completely. Mason took my hand and pulled me out the back door of the kitchen. He ran through the camp, through the bushes, and back to his room. I took off my squelching boots and pants. He took off his t-shirt and turned to face me, his amber eyes burning with a certain fire. I was out of breath from the water fight and the running, so I stood there staring at him. He bit his lip and practically jumped towards me, picking me up and wrapping my legs around his waist for extra support. He was so strong that I couldn't move. He walked to the wall, held me against it, and pressed his forehead against mine so that our faces were very close together. How does this feel for doing the wrong thing? His voice was rough, which went straight to my lower body. He found my hair and pulled the hair tie out, letting dark, wet strands fall freely around my shoulders. I looked up at him, and his face was full of desire and seduction. He was so beautiful that my stomach started to flutter when he got closer. His lips were slightly parted and wet, and my stomach started to flutter. I closed my eyes just as our lips met. I thought his rough hands would move over my body and his kiss would take everything quickly and hungrily, as if he wanted to destroy my face because Mason liked control and power. But instead, his kiss was sensual. You think about the perfect kiss in your mind, how gently he presses his lips against yours, how fast his tongue moves against yours, and the taste that stays in your dreams for weeks. Mason was all of that. He kissed me exactly how I wanted to be kissed. He kissed me in a way I had never been kissed before. He tasted sweet, like pear drops, and his movements were slow and precise, as if he had practiced them until they were perfect. There was no soldier in him. There were no fights, competitions, or battles between us. There were only two people sharing one feeling, one passion, in one heated moment. We were close and united. I ran my hands over the tight dips and mounds of his back muscles. He was the strongest man I had ever been with so close. His body was sculpted by the gods, and he put all of my past relationships to shame. He carried me to the bed without breaking a sweat, straining a muscle, or breaking our kiss. His body hovered over mine, and as our lips stayed locked, his strong hands slipped under my long t-shirt, grabbed the elastic of my panties, and pulled them down my thighs. He stood back and looked down at me like a man who was filled with every good feeling you could think of. It was strange to see my delicate pants in his big, strong hands, but it still felt right. He held his belt with both hands and quickly pulled it off, slipping it through all of the belt loops in a quick and skilled way. He held the whole thing in both hands and pulled hard, making the belt make a loud noise as it got tighter. I smiled with excitement and appreciation for what was to come. He found the button and zipper on his trousers while looking at me. He pulled on both of them, dropping everything else to the floor and showing me his body completely. I was wetter now than I was during the water fight. I sat on the bed and looked at his whole body, taking in all of its beauty. His biceps, abs, stomach muscles, thigh muscles, tattoo, and so on. It was just like Amber said it would be, but better. He was 8 inches long and thick, with veins that made even the most private part of his body look strong and lean. I sat up and put my hand around him so that we were face to face. He clenched his jaw and let out a breath, "I want you right now." He touched my hand to stop me from moving. I looked into his blue eyes and suddenly felt nervous. What if he doesn't want me to see him? Maybe he gets turned on when I don't. Will he want the same punishments and control in bed as he does on the pitch? Yes, sir. I looked down. What are you doing? He stopped for a second and then laughed. but he put his hand on my chin and pulled my face up to look at him. With you, I'm just Mason. It's the only place where I can be myself without pretending, being torn between two sides, or living up to anyone's expectations. Only Mason. I lay back and enjoyed the way his mouth and hands felt. My body was on fire, sizzling high in the flames. I needed more. Riley, I've wanted to do this to you since the first day I met you. This is so wrong. Why do I want to feel you? Why do I want to put and taste you? I groaned. He held me steady, and I looked back at him over my shoulder. I was sure that I would eventually explode and send small pieces of myself into space with the stars, without needing a rocket. My body tightened around him, begging for a release. A flood of feelings rushed through me, and I stayed stiff. It felt like everything between us was wetter, with him and me mixed together. That was amazing. I never thought it would be that good. I got off of him and fell onto the bed, breathing hard. He fell right next to me, his body shining with sweat like someone had rubbed oil into it. We were quiet and I wondered if he was sorry. I turned to look at him, and his chest rose and fell with his breathing. I said, "You taste like pear drops." He turned to look at me and smiled shyly, then bit his lip so his smile didn't get any bigger. I always keep them in my pocket. When no one is looking, I pop one in my mouth and take it until it disappears. He moved closer to me, put his arm around me, and pulled my body into his. I melted, safe in his arms. That was hard work for you, you're so strong. The way you lifted my body up and down, Jesus. His skills were way better than I thought they would be. That was unlike anything I've ever done, and I only thought he was good at sports because of how fit he is. You were loud, I hope we weren't heard. The shed walls are only thin. I laughed, and he did too. But then he stopped laughing and pulled back to look at me with a serious face. Did you really not fake it? Really? I'm not that good at acting. I ran my fingers along the lines of his tattoo, making it myself. Because I've never done that before, I said. I stopped drawing with my finger and looked at him. His whole body was relaxed and satisfied, which is very different from the lieutenant front he usually wears. What do you mean? I grew up in the military, so I didn't learn how to make friends and build relationships. What do you think that means? I think it means a 22-year-old virgin has been kicking me. I stopped. Jesus, I think it means I just took the virginity of a 22-year-old. He laughed and I snuggled up to him. How did you get so good? Please don't go tell your roommates what happened between us. I've had a long time to think about it. My lips turned up into a smile. If I told them, they would want to know everything I thought I couldn't tell anyone, I joked. I really don't want you to. But I made this choice, and I lost control. It had been building up inside me every time I was around you, and I couldn't fight it anymore. I can't ask you to keep that to yourself just because I messed up. I'm ready to face the consequences of my actions. I lay down on his comfortable bed and yawned. I said, "You're so dramatic. I'm not going to tell anyone." Did you say something about pizza with pepperoni and extra cheese? Because that's all I could think about when you had me bent over. He pushed my shoulder and made a tut sound with his tongue. I laughed at how fake angry he was and got up to get one of his clean, dry t-shirts from his drawer. He watched me from his bed, where the sheets were just below his waist. He was the most attractive person I had ever seen, and now that I had a taste of him, I secretly wanted to make him mine. Things moved slowly after we met once, but I became unhealthily obsessed with him. During boot camp, I found myself watching him more than usual on the pitch. His shirt hid his body, but I could picture all of his muscles as if the shirt wasn't there. I looked at his lips. Most of the time, they stayed straight, with no emotion behind them. But sometimes I would see them twitch with laughter, usually at someone else's expense. But he would cough or put his hand over his mouth to hide his secret smile. I thought about kissing them almost every second of every day because they were so soft and pink. I would take deep breaths of his breath when he yelled at me to keep a part of him inside me for longer. He always smelled like pear drops, and his eyes were like a golden, warm sunrise that promised something new and exciting would come next. He was in all of my thoughts, dreams, and wishes. So why wasn't he making the next move? We were back to normal, but worse than normal, after a week. We disappeared. I was the criminal, and he was the lieutenant. Only on the pitch do they coexist. Maddie asked me, "Why didn't you come to dinner, Riley?" as I put on my army trousers. I didn't go to dinner because I didn't want to see his face, to be honest. I was too addicted to him, so I had to stay away from him as much as I could to protect my heart. Jake gave me his metal stick thing, so I'm going to take one of the cars out for a drive and get some food somewhere else. Do you want to come? Maddie started laughing, like rolling around on her bed laughing. Riley, you're crazy. That's too much for me, you're going to get kicked out. I'm surprised you've lasted this long. I just shrugged. I couldn't stay inside like a caged animal, which is funny because if I get caught, I'll be put in a cage. I put on my jacket and waved goodbye to her, then slid the metal rod up my sleeve. There wasn't much light in the parking lot. I walked around looking for the car that looked the cheapest to steal. I thought that the cheaper it was, the more likely it was to belong to a lower-ranking officer. I saw a little Nissan that looked like it came from the 1990s. As soon as I put my hand on the glass, a whistle nearby made me stop. I looked around and didn't see anyone. Riley! I yelled when Mason snuck up behind me. You scared me half to death. I put my hand over my heart to calm it down. What are you doing here, Riley? His eyes went down to my hands, but the metal rod was still hidden in my sleeve. Nothing I could tell my lieutenant. I turned around on the gravel and planned to walk away to avoid punishment or, even worse, an awkward conversation. But when he grabbed my arm and turned me around, I could see the sadness in his eyes. Is that all I am to you now? Your lieutenant? I pulled my arm away because he was pushing the metal rod into my skin. Are you? I asked him again, and he frowned. He shook his car keys in his hands and then looked at his car. We can't talk about this here. He sighed and said, "Get in." I felt weird sitting in the passenger seat of his car, but I couldn't help but look at him. Maybe it was the way he held the steering wheel with his hands or the way he relaxed his legs that did it for me. Like driving really calmed him down. Is that strange? You didn't come to my room to see me after, he said after about 20 minutes of silence. You didn't ask me to. You didn't talk to me on the pitch. You didn't give me secret smiles in the cafeteria. I thought you were sorry. I said, not being able to look at him. I can't say I didn't have regrets because I did. I do. My heart sank. It hurt so much that it felt like it was squeezing my stomach. I've always tried to prove to myself that I'm good enough and that I can make my father proud. But I broke the rules, broke my oath, and let myself down. I paid close attention to what he was saying, trying not to let him know that I was upset by what he was saying. You know how many recruits have tried to seduce me over the years? I refused to let myself feel any urges so I could stay in complete control. I never thought about X, ever. I didn't feel turned on. I didn't watch P-Star. I didn't jerk off. I didn't even feel attracted to people. That can't be good for you. He lifted one shoulder. He moved his finger over his short stubble after taking one hand off the wheel. And then you showed up. At first, I was attracted to you because you were beautiful, Riley, but then I looked at you and felt nervous around you. My palms were always sweaty, my heart raced, and I was aware of every word I said because I didn't want to sound dumb. I looked forward to seeing you every day and prayed you would step out of queue so I could spend more time with you in the only way I could. I was in trouble because I was so drawn to you. I stopped watching the other recruits just to look at you. You had power over me like I've never known before. You're my diamond among the rocks. But that's exactly why it can't happen again. I let out a quiet breath. I wasn't ready for that. I liked your speech, but is that really what you want? I can think of a more fun way to do it. Riley, I'm driving, he gasped. So you drive, I'll eat. The car swerved a little, but the roads were mostly empty, so I don't think we were in any real danger. Are you going to say no? He moved around in his seat, and his cheeks got a little pink. Not because they were embarrassed, but because they were flustered. He was given a plate of temptation. Would he say no? No, he said firmly, and I smiled back at him as he tightened his grip on the steering wheel with both hands. No, don't do it, or no, you're not going to tell me no. He gasped and blinked his eyes shut, but then he remembered that he needed to see the road. Lieutenant, what do you want? Do you want my tongue all over your shaft or not? Riley, he hissed, grinding his teeth together and swaying the car even more. Yes, Jesus Christ, yes. The car moved slowly up the dirt road. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't want to. He pulled my mouth away completely and then back on it, and each time I touched it again, he practically screamed. Riley, I'm going to explode. I didn't think twice about doing what he wanted. Mason sent us back to boot camp after a lot of pointless sessions. He worked my body the same way he worked that field. I was in so much pain that I could barely walk. I wish you could stay with me. That's nice. Did you want to cuddle? I teased, my voice breaking out in laughter. For a moment, he looked a little awkward. Yeah, he said, sounding unsure. I couldn't help but laugh. I didn't think you were a cuddler. Night, Mason. But that made me smile more. He wanted to snuggle. How nice is that? Wait, Riley. He took off his dog tags and put them on over mine, moving my hair out of the way. I want you to wear them. I want you to carry a piece of me with you all the time. I put them inside my t-shirt and felt the warm metal press against my skin. It was still warm from his body. I went back to my own shed. Luckily, the lights were off and soft snoring could be heard from all sides. I climbed into my awful bed, closed my eyes, and smiled as I held his dog tags. I threw the itchy blanket over my head to block out the loud siren that was waking me up early in the morning. I yelled at the noise, my body was too sore for this. I put the thin, cheap pillow over my head to try to block out the noise. Riley, come on. He'll only make you do more work if you're late, Amber said. She took the duvet off of me and tried to pull the pillow away. Riley, we're leaving without you. Don't say I didn't warn you. The shed was quiet except for the stupid siren. I stayed in bed until the sirens stopped, and then I got up and quickly looked for my clothes. What? I yelled as I threw everything out of my trunk looking for the stupid army pants they make you wear. Then I remembered that I had taken them off in his car and left them there because my t-shirt was long enough to be a dress anyway. I looked for my spare parts, but they were all with the laundry department. I put on the long t-shirt from yesterday and my boots and ran to the pitch, where I was 15 minutes late. Mason was yelling orders at all the new recruits when he saw me and stopped in the middle of one. I stood up straight and saluted. What is this, Rivers? He yelled. Why aren't you wearing the right uniform? I fought the urge to look him in the eye and kept my stance facing forward. Sorry, Lieutenant, my uniform is, not compliant. I bit my lip to keep from laughing nervously. Mason was furious, and it didn't seem like it was part of the act he had to keep up. He yelled, What? His voice was so loud that it could be heard in an empty forest. He tightened his jaw. You get a disciplinary if you don't show up in the right clothes. I broke the blank stare and looked at him. His eyes were full of warning as they burned into me. I'll give you 5 minutes to go back and put on the right uniform, or you'll get in trouble for the 3rd time, I think. I can't, I tried to say with my eyes, but he clearly didn't get the hint. It's not possible right now. Take over while I deal with Rivers, he told one of the generals in a voice that made it clear he didn't like him. March on, soldier. I went into the office with him, and he slammed the door behind us. He was really cranky today. I left my army trousers in he pushed me against the wall of the shed and held my hands up over my head. I took a deep breath and filled my chest with air. I can see your panties, everyone can see your panties. His voice was low and rough, and it was dangerous. Right here. He moved his finger up my inner thigh and along the middle of my pants. I gasped, and right away I was turned on. He leaned in and bit my lower lip, pulling on it softly. I groaned into his mouth. I don't think you really get Riley. He held me in place with one hand on my back against the wall and the other on my inner thigh, moving it up and slipping his hand into my pants. He squeezed my whole area tightly, and I moaned softly. This is mine, he said, easily slipping one of his fingers in. Do you think I want anyone to see what is mine? I said as I moved on his fingers, pushing them deeper and deeper into me. No, he said quickly and pulled his whole hand away. I stopped right away because I missed the way he touched me. I felt empty and frustrated after my wetness left. I begged, Mason, my needy voice sounding strange to my own ears. He looked out the window at all the recruits doing the drill and then looked back at me. They were only a few yards away, so they were his problem. Lieutenant Goody Two-Shoes didn't want to have sex with me while he was on duty. He didn't want anyone to see or hear us or the shed shaking. He wasn't made to break the rules. He pulled me away from the wall and pushed me down on the desk, making me bend over. He pulled down my ivory lace panties from behind me, and I stepped out of them. He then balled them up in his hand and pushed them into my mouth. He whispered in my ear, "If you make a sound, they'll hear you." He made noises, but they weren't loud enough to be heard. He hummed, so perfect, I chewed on the lace and felt it break under my teeth. I held on to the edges of the desk. He used his strong hands to pull my cheeks apart. A kiss that lasted a long time and was full of passion, and just as we were done, someone burst into the office and stared at us like a deer in headlights. "Sorry, Lieutenant Sir, I didn't know this office was busy." Mason stayed calm, even though his fly was down and his cheeks were red. "Rivers, I'll let you off with a warning this time. Don't let this happen again. Go get some spare sweatpants and leave." "Yes, sir," I said, and then I left. The nurse gave me a bundle of spare clothes, and I went back to my room to change. I pulled down my panties and looked at how much I had torn the lace with my teeth, but I didn't focus on the tears. Instead, I focused on the small spots of blood at the bottom. He wasn't too rough with me, was he? I took a tissue and wiped up more small blood spots. "What's going on?" I said, confused, in the quiet of our empty bedroom. I bit my nails down to the quick. Like real stumps, blood had formed around the edges, and it hurt. I was scared. The bleeding stopped after a day. It wasn't my period, even though it was due, and I was sure Mason didn't hit me that hard. I've had worse and never bled before. After that, I only wore white pants, and I couldn't stop checking for blood every time I went to the bathroom. Days went by, days of running on the track and climbing assault courses. Days of doing drills and getting yelled at by Mason. But then the nights would come, and I'd lie under the stars with Jake while he smoked his illegal cigarettes, or I'd gossip with the girls at the bar, or I'd cuddle up on the couch with Mason and eat takeaway. And I never bled again. I thought it was just a mistake. Is it normal? I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't Google it, but let's be honest, that would only tell me I was dying anyway. Even though I didn't bleed again, I still went to the bathroom and wiped extra hard or checked my pants for red. In the end, I began to wait for blood and pray for it. I was scared because my period was late. "Jake, have you ever hurt a girl?" He blew smoke up towards the stars and turned to look at me. "I don't know, is that something I should know?" he said. "I don't know, maybe. Probably not, since I didn't tell Mason he hurt me." "Do girls really say things like that to guys?" "Are you someone?" he asked, his face full of curiosity and amusement. Under the clear moon, his eyes shone. "No," I said quickly, and he laughed so hard that his chest shook. He smoked another cigarette. But what if I were and my period was late? What would they do about that here? He sat up quickly and looked at me with wide eyes. Riley, who? I shook my head. Not a big deal. Do you know for sure that you're no? He put out his half-smoked cigarette on the muddy ground. His face was so serious that it made me feel even worse. All the worry and stress made me feel sick to my stomach. I hope it was just from all the stress and worry. You have to find out. He pulled the car rod out of his pocket and gave it to me. The store 30 minutes away will sell tests. I sighed in disappointment but agreed because I didn't have any other choice. I wanted Mason's car, but I needed him to come with me on this trip. His car smelled clean and neat, just like he did. It made me feel better. He liked things to be in order and under control. If I were pregnant, I would have crashed into him like a whirlwind, and I don't even know what would happen. Starlight was a small business that was open all the time. The woman at the counter looked older than my grandfather's ballsack, but she had a hunting rifle next to her, so she wasn't going to mess around. She gave me a wrinkled smile, and I took a pregnancy test off the shelf and, as an afterthought, some condoms. Are you from that army recruitment camp? She asked, looking at what I was wearing. Her words got stuck in her gums, and she lost track of how to say them. Yep, I said, tapping nervously on the counter while she rang up my 2 items on her old register. Must be nice to be around all those men. She gave my things a flirty look, and I pursed my lips. Yep, I said again, letting her know I didn't want to talk. I've seen them walking around town with their muscles. She gave me the bag of things and a gummy smile. I smiled at her in a strange way. Have a good night. I threw the bag on the passenger seat of Mason's car and drove straight back to camp. When I got to the parking lot, things seemed different. The floodlights were always on, but tonight there were more lights, like walking around lights and people. I turned off his headlights and the engine stopped rumbling. I crouched down lower in the seat so they wouldn't see me. As soon as a torch shone through the glass, I quickly bent my head down, which set off his car alarm. There were security guards all around the car, so I had to give myself up. I carefully got out of the car, and one of the guys put handcuffs on me and called the commander on his walkie-talkie. Bring her in, he said. The staff quarters had the commander's office. I had never been there before, but it wasn't a shed or a cabin. It was a real office made of bricks. The security guy who was holding my arm tightly looked very pleased with himself. I could almost see the shit hanging off his nose from being so far up the commander's ass. Rivers, sir, the security guard said as he pushed me down into the leather chair across from the commander. The commander, Mason Sr., made a face at me from behind a dark oak desk. He clasped his hands together and rested them upon the table. Riley Rivers held a convenience store up at gunpoint. Scared a lot of people that day. He worded in a strict, stern tone. My security officers tell me you're now dabbling in Grand Theft Auto. What a game, I said with a laugh. He took a deep breath, which made his chest rise, and then he pressed a button on a small machine that was attached to his desk. Red Dog, this is your commander. Please come into my office. I swallowed hard, Red Dog was Mason's name. Yes, sir. I'm on my way, Mason said. While we waited, the commander didn't say anything. Nothing at all. He looked at me with cold, hard eyes. I looked at him. I looked at him in a way that showed him I wasn't scared. He was a lot like Mason, with a hard stare and a tight mouth. His eyes were the same amber brown as Mason's, but the commander's were cold and Mason's were hot enough to start a fire in me. The door knocked, and at that moment, I was scared. Mason walked in and straightened his clothes before looking up and seeing me. He frowned and looked disappointed for a split second before shaking off any expression and keeping his face blank. He stood up straight. At ease, Lieutenant. Mason stopped saluting and stood straight, with his hands at his sides and his eyes straight ahead. Rivers decided to hotwire your car tonight and drive it off campus. What do you think is a fair punishment for what she did? He only looked at me, then his dad, and then back to me again. He was quiet and his skin had gotten pale. I put my head down because I was embarrassed that I got caught. I was ashamed to put him through this. I was embarrassed that I had to go buy a pregnancy test in the first place. He made a noise in his throat. I don't think there is a good punishment, sir. So we're in agreement, her third and last punishment. His dad said, eager to get me out of the way because I was one less recruit to worry about failing the fitness test. Sir, yes sir. Mason said this with confidence, as if he had no doubts. I can't blame him, he did warn me. And you'll file charges for the theft. Mason looked at me again, his eyes narrowing and his jaw tightening. He was really angry. Yes, sir. I squinted at him. Did he really need to charge me extra? Okay, I'll have an officer pick her up tonight. The commander picked up the phone and started dialing. Sir, tonight? It's late. Wouldn't it be better tomorrow? The commander was about to speak when there was another knock at the door. He hung up the phone and told the person who was knocking to come in. Sorry to bother you, Commander, sir, but we found these in his car. We have a strong feeling they belong to her. The security guard dumped the stuff from my white plastic bag onto the table. The small box with big pink letters that said pregnancy test was on full display. Mason's eyes got as big as golf balls, and his head shot in my direction, breaking all the rules. I couldn't look at him, so I focused on the green spots that made the camouflage pattern on my trousers. I tried to blend in so well that I would disappear completely. There was a lot of silence in the commander's office, but my ears still hurt. Lieutenant, is this yours? The commander's voice was less stern and more curious. No, sir. Mason's voice was full of fear. A pregnancy test, the commander said. I slowly raised my eyes to meet his. And why would you need a pregnancy test in a boot camp detention where you can't have visitors? Maybe you should tell your officers that, I said back. The commander stood up, leaned over the table, and looked down at me. Are you saying that my officers are to blame for that? He looked at the pregnancy test and I smiled. No, the road is to blame for that. But this baby, I patted my stomach, is from one of your officers. Rivers. Mason yelled in his lieutenant voice. We all looked at him right away. Don't throw accusations around, that's a direct order. I bet it is, I said. My smile grew. The commander opened the box and took it out. He looked at the instruction manual for a while before giving me the stick. Through there, he said, pointing to a door with two strong fingers. There's no point in thinking there's a problem if there isn't one. Lieutenant, watch her do it. Shouldn't I have a female nurse instead of a male one? I'm not peeing in front of him. This problem stays in this room, Rivers. Test now. I held the test stick tightly in my hand and slowly walked to the bathroom with Mason behind me. Leave the door open, the commander yelled. I sat down on the toilet seat and looked at Mason. He crossed his arms over his chest and looked like he didn't want to talk to me. It was like he didn't care. He had emotionally distanced himself from the situation, and if I was pregnant, it was a problem. My issue. A problem, as his father said. That wasn't his fault, it was mine. I peed on the stick and then gave it to him with the pee side up. He grimaced, switched it, and then washed his hands. The commander yelled, "What does it say?" It needs time, Mason said as he looked at the test like he was about to defuse a bomb. I muttered, "Dumbass." Mason took the stick outside and put it on the desk. The two men stood over it, watching closely, while I stayed back in the bathroom doorway. "Pregnant," said the commander in a clear voice. "Pregnant," Mason said again, this time more slowly and quietly, not believing it. The commander narrowed his eyes at me, but Mason stayed focused on the test, hoping it would change. "I know a guy. I'll set up your appointment for tomorrow," the commander said as he looked through a directory on his desk. "You're getting me a doctor?" I asked, not expecting that at all. "An abortion." He kept flipping through the directory, not even looking at me. But Mason's attention was drawn to his father, and then it turned to me, softening. "What? I don't think I am. I just found out. I need time to think about it." "What's there to think about, Rivers? You broke the law and got yourself pregnant. You brought shame on our leadership." He looked at Mason. "That wasn't too hard," Mason said, lowering his head. "We're not keeping you here pregnant. You'll go to jail pregnant. Is that what you want? Your baby will be born and go straight to foster care because you're in jail." I turned to Mason for help, support, or something. Maybe the dad could. "No. Not my officers." He cut in. "You've done enough to ruin my boot camp. You've seduced my men. The only thing you can do is end the pregnancy. You're selfish for even thinking you could keep it." I didn't let my tears fall. Mason didn't say anything. He didn't stand up for me or our baby. He didn't say anything and just stood there, staring at the dumb pea stick. I asked him straight out, "What do you think?" He started with "I think" and then stopped for a moment to look at his father's face, my face, and the positive pregnancy test again. "I believe you should have an abortion." I wanted to say something like, "Well, I think you should have wrapped up," but I didn't. Instead, I just cried. My tears kept coming, and I put my hand over my mouth to stop the sobs. It was a mess, and it broke my heart, but neither of them made me feel better. Mason didn't help me when I needed him the most. Take her to the disease center. We'll keep her there away from everyone else until her appointment. You can get better there, Rivers, and then we'll tell the judge that boot camp isn't working out for you. The charges depend mostly on how quietly the abortion goes. Are you blackmailing me? I whined. I'm giving you a free abortion and aftercare. I'm just strongly suggesting that you take me up on that offer, Rivers. You wouldn't want the judge to find out about all the crimes you've committed while you've been here. Car theft. Theft of personal belongings. Anger and aggression. I'll check on you tomorrow to make sure you've made the right choice. Keep her away from all the generals and recruits, the commander said. Mason walked me to the quarantine building, and it was an awkward silence the whole way there. I still cried, but I wouldn't talk to him, look at him, or breathe the same air as him. I despised him. He tried, nervously, Riley. I took off his dog tags and threw them at him. You said nothing. I hate you. I told you what I really thought, Riley. I pushed him, but he didn't even flinch. Still, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have trapped me like that. That was something we needed to talk about in private, not you and your dad teaming up against me. God, how did you think I'd react? You dropped this bombshell on me in the worst way possible. I need time to think. To process. You asked what I thought, and I told you. I stopped, and my combat boots made a pile of dirt. I took his hand and put it on my stomach. Do you not want our baby? He looked at my stomach and then at my face. That's not a baby, it's just a bunch of cells. The tears came harder, and my heart felt like it was breaking. I didn't want to end our baby's life. I'm really hurt, I said softly. You're really hurting and disappointing me, Riley. He grabbed my arm and now wanted to give me the comfort he should have given me 5 minutes ago. I took it back harshly. No, I'm done with you, I said as I walked ahead and heard him walk faster behind me. You're an arsehole. Riley, you're being too emotional about this. My dad is right, what kind of life would it have? You'll be in jail and I'll be here. It can't live here. It can't be raised like me. The cycle ends with me. I stopped and turned around, making patterns in the dirt with my combat boots. Don't tell me I'm being too emotional about a pregnancy that I have to end. I poked his rock-hard chest with my finger. Don't tell me I'm being too emotional, Lieutenant who thinks I'm good but doesn't stand by me when I get pregnant. I hit him again with my finger. Don't tell me I'm being too emotional when you let your dad blackmail me and you don't have the guts to stand up to him. I was falling apart in front of him, crying, scared, and alone. He let out a sad sigh. Riley, he whispered softly and pulled me into his chest. I cried on him, and my tears soaked his t-shirt. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He ran his fingers through my hair. You're right. He held me close with his strong, long arms, right in the middle of boot camp. Not caring who could see it. Not caring if it was against the rules. He kissed my forehead gently and then pulled away. I support you 100%. It's your choice, and I won't let him blackmail you. I will support whatever you decide, but my opinion hasn't changed. I still think it's best if you end the pregnancy. The quarantine building looked like a hospital, with all the white sheets, antibacterial smells and plastic shields. My eyes hurt from the bright light and the crying as I looked around the room. Rivers is here for infection control. Give her the best room and leave her alone. Only let me in to see her every day, no one else. He told the nurse, who was dressed like I was an alien with a deadly poison. She gave me a hospital gown, and I smiled at her awkwardly, showing my thanks. She took me to a bedroom, which was a lot nicer than my shed. I also had my own bathroom with a tub. It's been a long time since I took a bath. I asked him, "Are you really going to keep me here like a prisoner?" He opened the curtains, which let in more light, but the view was still the same. Mud, trenches, and depression. You have a warm bed, food, and a TV. This is heaven compared to what you've been through. He walked over to me and put his cold hand on my cheek. I could go to jail for this, Riley. I abused my position. You know that, right? I swallowed. I thought he might get in trouble, but jail? Riley, I'll fight for you. If you want to keep this baby, I'll make sure they give you that choice, but I'm putting everything on the line to do that, and I need you to be sure. Okay, I'll be sure. I cut him off quickly because I was too tired to talk about it right now. I didn't want to feel even more guilty if I decided to go through with the pregnancy. What would that even look like? He made it clear that he didn't want to be involved. I need you to think about everything. If you're in jail, you can't take care of the baby. If I say the baby is mine, I could go to jail too. I can't take care of the baby. It will end up in foster care. What kind of life is that? I said okay, I said, this time more forcefully. You made your thoughts on this whole thing very clear. I had to think about this for a while. My own thoughts, not what other people think, are what I think. I felt like I had to have an abortion because of the pressure. I rubbed my temples because I had an emotional stress headache and wanted to sleep. I'll bring you your clothes, he said, looking at the hospital gown. This is fine, I just want to sleep. He nodded sadly. I'll come by tomorrow and bring you breakfast and your things. I turned my back on him and began to take off my clothes so I could put on the hospital gown. He stayed in my room for a while, and I could tell he wanted to say more, but I didn't want to hear it right now. I'm sorry, Riley, he said. I just nodded at him again and didn't look back to see him leave. I curled up in bed and covered myself with the blankets to stay warm and comfortable. I felt like I was full of emotions, fears, and worries. I knew what was best for this baby, but I felt bad and guilty even though it hadn't happened yet. I would have kept him in a different life. Yes, I had made up my mind that it was a boy. A pretty boy with blonde hair who didn't always let people in but had a big heart. He would be loud, curious, and crazy. He would be fun, tough, and demanding, but he would always be nice. He was my baby, and even though Mason didn't want him, he was still made with love. I really cared about his father. I loved my son very much, and that's why I had to do what was best for him. I had to end this pregnancy. I closed my eyes because everything hurt and felt swollen from all the crying. Then I cried some more. I cried a lot into my pillow. I thought I would never stop crying. I was in pain and my heart was broken. Where was I? Taken away to a quarantine house in the back of a building, all by myself. I put my hands on my stomach. I'm not alone, I'm with you. Baby, when your daddy leaves me, you're here for me. Just me and you. I wiped my tears. For a while, I said, crying more and more. I'm so sorry, baby. It's for the best. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Riley. He poked me softly, and I opened my eyes. Hey, how are you? He spoke softly, as if I were a child. It was strange because he usually yelled his words and barked his orders, but today he treated me like I was a piece of fragile glass. I moved around on the bed and pushed my tangled hair back. I'm going to have the abortion. I took a shaky breath and watched how he reacted. He didn't say anything, he just ran his finger over his stubble and thought. Is that what you want? He asked after a while. No, but that's for the best. We can't have a baby Mason, it's not fair to him. Him? He asked, looking down at my stomach. You know it's a boy. I almost smiled because he was so naive about this. How could I possibly know that? No, I just think it's a boy. He smiled a little. Hey, I think it's a girl. My eyes got big because I was surprised he even thought about the baby's gender. It wasn't a baby at all last night, it was just a bunch of cells. You do? I asked, my voice full of disbelief. Yeah, she was cute and caused trouble and stuff, but her big blue eyes made me melt, so I could never really be mad at her. I even gave her a name. You did? My voice was now high-pitched with shock. He named our child? Yeah, Melody. I laughed sadly because I couldn't picture myself calling my daughter Melody. He said, it was my mom's name. And I thought, I don't know. He started to blush. What? It's sort of a nod to you because you're a diamond, I finished his sentence with among the rocks, and he smiled. Yeah. He took my hand and looked at me with a lot of intensity. Riley, I'm sorry. What I did yesterday was wrong. You needed me and I wasn't there. It was a lot. I never wanted kids and I never even thought about the possibility of getting you pregnant. I don't know, I panicked. I had just found out and that wasn't fair because you had just found out too. What are you trying to say, Mason? I'm saying, he said, stopping to think and biting his lower lip. I mean, I want you to keep the baby. I want us to keep the baby. He sighed and said, how? I don't know, I haven't figured it out yet, but it starts with not getting an abortion. I have 9 months to figure out the rest. He moved up next to me on the bed and wrapped his arms around me. Are you really in this 100%? Because if you change your mind again, my heart won't be able to take it. His hands touched my stomach, and I felt butterflies in my stomach. His eyes were so warm, protective, and safe. That's my baby in there. My little, defenseless baby. I'm not going to let anything happen to you, Riley. I'm going to protect you, our baby, and our family. Daddy, I whispered. His eyes sparkled with such strong feelings that they might have even gotten a little watery. Mason, the robot cried. It was beautiful how his humanity came through. Daddy. He said it again, this time with thought. I like it. I kissed him sweetly with my head tilted up. His warmth wrapped around my body, his chest rose and fell slowly, and his big hands cradled my face. It made me feel less alone in this. The static from Mason's walkie-talkie filled the room, and he rolled his eyes, unhooked it from his belt, and held it to his lips. Come in, Red Dog. This is your commander. Is the girl ready? His eyes floated to mine, almost see-through like the sap on a tree's bark. Trust me, okay. I nodded, but I was scared. Sir, Miss Rivers and I seem to have different opinions. She really wants to move forward with her situation. Wow, I said quietly after he took his thumb off the button to talk. God, I thought you were this strong, brave man, but you're just going to sit back and let me take the blame for not wanting to kill our baby. He said softly, trust me, and his eyes were so sure. I've got this. Nothing is going to happen to you or our baby. Bring her in, Red Dog. I want to talk to her. On our way, sir. The commander was pacing the floor of his office with the door wide open, waiting for us. He told us to close the door and sit down. He stopped walking and looked straight into my soul, burning away what was left of my innocence. So you've changed your mind? Tell me, how do you think that will help your child? His voice was sharp and hurtful. Well, first of all, he or she would be alive. I bit back, feeling the sharpness of my own tongue. Riley, Mason said, cutting me off because he didn't like how snarky I sounded. The commander raised his eyebrows and looked at Mason. Riley? He asked. Lieutenant, do you talk to all of the recruits like this? No, sir, Mason said politely. There was a pause before he dropped the bombshell. Only the ones I get pregnant, sir. My mouth dropped open, and I couldn't help but look at Mason, who kept his eyes on his father with unwavering strength. The commander's voice changed from a harsh tone to a higher pitch, showing how shocked he was. I have to admit, sir, that Riley and I have been very close and she is having my child. Your grandchild, sir. The room went quiet, and I slowly turned to the commander to see how he would react. He just looked at his son with no expression. Understanding. It was like two strangers talking to each other. The commander finally shook his head and laughed to himself in a dark way. You. Mason stiffened, getting ready for more of his father's abuse and bullying. I don't think you're that dumb. He looked down at me with shame, like he had just found out that his son had slept with a hooker and gotten her pregnant. No, not the man I raised. He stood up right away and said no to the claims. That's enough. Take her back to quarantine. We're done here for now. Sir, the baby is mine and we both want it very much. The commander hit the table with his fists in anger, and I flinched. How could you let this happen, Mason? How could you bring shame on me like this? You got one of the criminals pregnant. Do you know what you've done? Do you know what you're risking by not getting rid of that thing? He pointed at my stomach. You. The lieutenant, my son. You'll go to jail for this. They'll shut this whole place down. This is serious. I know, I understand, sir. Mason looked down. You seduced him, the commander said, pointing a finger at me. This is your fault. No, I started it, Mason said in his defense. The commander sat down and pressed his nose bridge together. Stop talking, Mason. Not until we're alone. This is going to make us look really bad. I knew you were incompetent, but this is even worse than I thought. You should never have taken the lieutenant job, you were always one of them. No way! I yelled as I stood up. He's an amazing lieutenant. He's actually too good. He manages all of the generals and recruits, and I can see how stressed he is to make sure they're up to your standards. He gives out punishments and is very professional. Yes, a real pro knocking up a whore. Don't call her that. Mason's fists were clenched at his sides, and I grabbed his arm and squeezed his bicep to let him know I was okay. This might not have happened if you had been a real father to him and put his best interests first instead of locking him up and making him feel like he had done something wrong in your eyes. You made him live alone for the rest of his life. He had no friends, no family, and no father to lean on. Mason has been alone his whole life, so forgive him for finally wanting to be close to someone. The commander raised an eyebrow at me. You're not going to make her kill that thing, Mason. You're so stupid. You're not good at anything in your life. Do you really think you can be a father? I could see the doubts rolling into his face and through everything he believed. I took his hand and said, Don't listen to him, Mason. I'm disappointed in you, Mason. Do you really want your legacy to be part criminal? Look at the woman you chose to be the mother of your child. How do you know she's not lying? How do you know she's not sleeping with every recruit and officer who will drop their pants for her? Wake up, dumb boy. They're criminals. They lie, cheat, and sleep around. You can't trust anything she says or does. Stop, Mason said in a way that was dangerous. Your mother was the same. You couldn't believe a word that came out of her whorish mouth either. I was stupid to get her pregnant. I was young and stupid. I was a general, and you're a lieutenant. You should have known better. Don't make my mistakes, son. Make her get the abortion. Mason looked at me and held my gaze with a lot of feeling in his eyes. Telling me something without saying a word that I didn't get. He turned back to his dad. You're right, he said to the commander. I took a deep breath and held it. I don't know if the baby is mine, but Riley says she's only slept with 2 people, and I'm one of them. I tried to ask, what are you? But he cut me off. You're the other. The commander laughed and shook his head, but Mason sat up straight and serious. That's crazy. His dad sounded scared, and I was confused. That's exactly what I was thinking, sir. Once the baby is born, the DNA test will probably not be useful because you and I have very similar DNA. So, who is likely to get more time in jail? I've never slept with her and I never will. Riley, did you sleep with my dad? I smiled. I remember very well how alike you two are, how you both grab. That's too much, Mason said, and I closed my lips. The commander sighed and looked like he had lost. What do you want, Mason? He asked in a stubborn way. She'll live with me in my living quarters, where she can get the best medical care. She'll serve out the rest of her sentence here, where she won't be sent away. We'll keep the pregnancy a secret from as many people as possible for as long as possible, and we'll tell the recruits that she's gone. Are you going to keep her locked up in your room?" The commander seemed to find this funny. Mason looked at me out of the corner of his eye to see how I would react. "Not locked, just careful." "And when the baby is born?" "When the baby is born, we'll take care of him or her here until Riley's sentence is over, and then I'm leaving." "Leaving?" my father and I both asked at the same time. "Yes. I'm leaving the military. By the time Riley's sentence is over, the child will be 2 years old. I never wanted to raise a child here, and I don't even want kids. At 2, my son or daughter would just be starting to make friends, and I'd rather encourage that than scream at people all day to march." The commander clearly didn't like what his son did. "I have a small fortune. I've worked almost my whole life and spent almost none of it. 2 years, sir, and I'm out. I never want to hear from you again. You're making a big mistake, son. You're going to start a life with her and have a family. She's a criminal. Still, she's been more caring than my real do-gooder father. Let's go, Riley." I didn't just feel bad. I was the picture of sickness. I looked like I had thrown up. I smelled like vomit. I was, in fact, vomit. Mason's lap was where my head was. He gently played with my hair, brushing it with his fingers and sending shivers down my spine. There was a terrible cartoon on his TV, and I was completely captivated by it. "He really is perfect," he said, holding the skin pictures up with the other hand. "You know the pictures don't change every time you look at them." He put them in front of my face, and I stopped watching TV and looked at the pictures instead. "Look at his toes, though." I smiled because they were cute toes. "And his nose." The nose was also cute. Mason said, "I want to kiss his nose." "Shit, he's just so perfect." I got up and fixed my hair, which freed Mason's lap. He got up and went to the fridge, where he took out a bottle of water and drank from it. He wiped the wetness off his lips, and my eyes moved over his perfect body. He was a big, strong man, with a nice face and a strong 8-pack. I was a nervous whale, and I was more than halfway through my pregnancy with no way to hide the basketball under my shirt. Most of the time, I felt heavy and uncomfortable, and none of my clothes fit me anymore. "Why do you have that look on your face?" "Because you're a ex-god and I'm a frump." He came back to the couch and put my swollen legs on his lap. "What are you talking about? You're beautiful, and your body is perfect." He held my rock-hard stomach and the baby kicked, which made his eyes light up like they do every time. He laughed and said, "Those little toes are strong. I'm losing myself more and more. My individuality is going away like my waistband. I want my body back, Mason." The nurse said, "It's too soon, we have to get to 40 weeks. At first, I liked being pregnant. I was very tired, and while Mason worked out on the pitch, I could sleep in until late. Mason would come back in the evening and we would laugh about how bad the recruits were that day. And even though it was nice to have him all to myself in a little secret safety bubble shed, I was starting to miss being out on the pitch, where I felt like myself and normal. Mason would take me out on really boring days, always at night so no one would see us. He would take me for a drive on the dirt roads or to get bad food from the side of the road. For a long time, we had sex all the time, and my hormones were making my drive go crazy. But now, this was the last thing on my mind. I got used to the routine of being awake at night and sleeping during the day. But it just made me realize that seeing sunlight through a dirty window wasn't enough. I felt like I was in a small space. I don't know if it was the hormones that made me feel so bad or if I was just unhappy in general. But I hated having those thoughts because this baby, our son, was such a gift to me. I was thankful for him and his health because I loved him so much. I just wanted my body back, which Mason did get but couldn't understand. I just want things to go back to normal, I said. Why don't you ask some of my friends to come back? I miss them, and I know they won't tell anyone. Riley. He said it softly, as if he were already letting me down with that word. We can't get caught. But my friends would probably do anything to get me to ship. They hate me because I'm their lieutenant, remember? I punish them every day, act like I'm better than them, and am in charge of their sentence. Okay, and some of them might hurt you just to get back at me. They might hurt our baby. I'm not going to take that chance. He put his warm hand on my stomach. I will do everything I can to keep him safe. Mason. I pushed his hand away and stood up. I get it, but I'm sad and lonely. I want to see the girls I shared a bunker with and Jake. That's all. They could come here, and we could not. No, I didn't like it when people said no. I had a big problem with people in charge, and Mason should have known that. But I know him, and he cares a lot about authority. We're two different people who don't get along. I walked over to him and sat down on his lap. He put his hands on my belly again right away, with the big ball stuck between us. I asked again, no. No, he said again. I kissed him softly all over his neck, and his hands moved from my belly to my hips. But you're always so nice to me. I whispered into his ear, and I could feel his body shiver from the sound. You get me what I want when I want it, like when I want spicy peppers and you go to the 24-hour mart to get them. I kissed him along his jawline, and he tightened his lips. When I want you, you give me what I need, as many times as I want and letting me use you for my pleasure. I kissed his lips softly, and even though he tried to make things more passionate, I pulled away, teasing him. You give me strength, make me believe I'll be a good mom, and make me feel beautiful when I'm feeling down. You make me feel like a diamond among rocks, and right now, you're the only one who can stop me from feeling so sad. I pulled on his lip with my teeth, and he let out a small whimper. I really don't like this, he said, sounding a bit doubtful. I held back a smile because I knew I had won him over. But whatever you're feeling, he's feeling too, right? I should have started with that. I would have gotten my way a lot faster. He looked at me with narrow hickory eyes in disgust. Okay, Riley. He said yes, but he didn't want to. But only a few, and they have to come to my shed. I want to be here. I want to watch them. I laughed at first, but then I realized he wasn't joking. Okay, but don't be weird. They will feel very uncomfortable around you. Don't punish them or be rude to them. I never rude, and I wouldn't punish them in their free time, but if they tell anyone about this, I'll give them a punishment right away. I told them, just be normal. Are you able to do that? Yes, he said through gritted teeth. Okay, you can stay. I said yes. I told you, Riley, I'm staying. That was non-negotiable. I rolled my eyes at how pushy he was, and then none of us said anything for a while. He was probably thinking too much about the whole thing. I was curious if he would let my friends and me order a pizza, or would that be too much luck? Forget it, I'll ask. Can we get a pizza? I guess that's my answer because he glared at me in a dangerous way. No, he said coldly. The sound of the mason's shed door opening woke me up. I got up and rubbed my eyes to get rid of the tiredness. Mason said he would tell Jake, Sierra, Raven, and Amber that I didn't really leave after boot camp today. He said I've been here all along and that I'm pregnant with his baby. That was going to be a hard pill for them to swallow, but I wasn't scared, I was excited. Jake was the first to come in. He looked around Mason's shed in awe before seeing me. When Amber, Raven, and Sierra walked in, they screamed and then ran over to hug me. Wow! Mason said in his stern lieutenant voice. Back up! Their mouths and feet stopped moving. Amber squealed with joy from a distance, I can't believe you're here. You're really here! Mason yelled, Soldiers, stand up straight! The four of them stood in a straight line, with their heads held high and their hands at their sides. Mason I stood up and let go of the blanket that was covering me. The four of them stopped what they were doing and looked down at my stomach. They were in shock, completely and totally. Wow! You're pregnant, Sierra said slowly. Jake yelled, What? In shock. Raven asked, with him. What? Jake yelled again. You didn't tell them. I asked, but Mason stood tall and in charge. He looked ahead and didn't show any emotion or reaction on his face. Amber asked, Is it a girl or a boy? Boy, I said. She looked at Mason to see what he was up to. Wow, that boy is going to be really hot. Jake began. I told them, don't say it again. Jake began to walk towards me. Back up, Jake! Mason yelled, and I put my hand on my face. He whispered to me, You have the demon spawn inside of you, and it was clear that he wasn't trying to hide it. I looked at Mason and could tell he was a little hurt by what I said, but he stayed in his lieutenant's stance. I waddled over to the fridge and got out a few bottles. Do you guys want a beer? My friends all looked at Mason, as if they were waiting for him to say yes. Did I tell you that you could break attention, soldiers? They all stood up straight and put their hands on their heads again. Mason looked them over one by one, checking their uniforms and how they were standing. I could feel myself blushing because he was being so professional when I just wanted him to be friendly. Is this really necessary? I mean, be careful when you get close to rivers. Only take slow, careful steps. Don't touch the stomach. Don't hurt the mother or the child in any way. Do you understand, soldiers? Yes, "Sir," they all said at once. "At ease." He went to the side of the room so he could see everything that was going on but not really be a part of it. My friends, who were all feeling really awkward, sat down around me and looked at each other, unsure of how to start a conversation. "So, how have you been?" I asked, glancing at Mason, who was watching us like he was in charge of the cafeteria. I gave them all a beer, but no one drank it. I knew they wanted to talk to me and ask me things. They wanted to talk about Mason and how we were doing as a couple. They wanted to drink the beer and hear the gossip, but they couldn't. It was awkward. We talked about how hot it's been lately and how much they missed the taste of chocolate. "It's okay," I said when Jake started talking about the cafeteria slop for the third time. "We can talk normally. He won't care." They were too scared of getting in trouble to even look at him. "Jake, have you driven any cars lately?" "Riley, no." He gave me a look that said, "Shut up." "Have you girls gone back to the pub? Does the band still play there?" "I miss that place, we should go there sometime." "Riley." Raven gasped, and Sierra shook her head at me. Amber was brave enough to look at Mason for a second. I called out to him, "Mason, come here," but he didn't move an inch. He just stood still and looked straight ahead. Jake stood up and said, "I think I'm going to go." "It was nice to see you again, Riley." "Don't go," she said. "Yeah, it's getting late," Raven said, yawning. "Please stay, guys." "Sorry Riley, but I can't risk my life on this. I have kids and can't go to jail." Sierra stood up to join Raven, and then Amber followed them. "This is your fault," I said, pointing a thin finger at Mason. He stopped paying attention to look at me. "I told you to be normal, so why did you bring your weird?" "This is my normal. I told you I didn't want this to happen. It's making things awkward for me and for them. It's completely unprofessional." Jake laughed at the irony, and Raven slapped him on the chest. "Guys, please stay. We'll order food and watch a movie." "Mason, tell them you won't be giving out any punishments tonight. Tell them to relax and that you don't care what they do in secret. You're not their lieutenant tonight." My hormones built up inside me and then burst out in tears. I cried like my heart was breaking, and Mason came over and rubbed my back to make me feel better. "Riley, are you okay?" "It's okay." He said this in a calm voice, but I could see the fear in his eyes. He hated it when I cried. "Don't cry, Jesus Riley. I promise we'll stay," Jake said as he sat down next to me. "Yeah, come on Riley, stop these silly tears." Sierra hugged me and wiped my eyes dry. Amber lightly tapped my belly and said, "Whatever you feel, he feels." Mason spoke up. "Ah! Hands off the belly." She quickly pulled her hand back, and I started to laugh along with my tears. "Please, can we all just be normal?" I begged them. "I'll order the pizza, what do you guys want?" Mason said as he reached for his phone on the bedside table. I smiled gratefully. "I can't believe you were sleeping with the lieutenant all this time," Raven said in a low voice so Mason couldn't hear. "Does he make you call him sir when you're in bed?" Sierra whispered. "No, I don't. He answered for me, which surprised her and made her blush. Do you have any other questions about our life? I've heard it's a big topic of conversation for you. My friends were quiet for a few seconds, and then we all started laughing. Hey, I'm just here for the pizza. Load me up with pepperoni. Jake cut through the laughter and grabbed a beer. He opened it and drank it all. Riley? Amber asked. Uh-huh. You need to go to the toilet. I shook my head and laughed at her strange question. I think you do, she said, pointing to the sweatpants I was wearing. The fabric was getting darker and darker because of a wet patch. Mason stood up, his eyes getting bigger with fear. Is that your water? Raven asked slowly. How many weeks are you? It's too early, Mason said slowly. My stomach hurt like a knot that was getting tighter and tighter until there was no more pull. Then it slowly let go. I held my stomach, which was getting harder and harder. I have pain, I said softly, trying to stay calm. You should call the doctor. Mason was not himself anymore. Usually in charge of leadership and order. Now lost, unable to talk or move. He stood there, looking pale and terrified, not moving a muscle. No, he said softly. It's too soon. Beep. 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 The bright light and noise around me slowly opened my eyelids. My stomach was empty and my tongue was dry. I felt like my stomach was empty. I tried to push my body up with all my might, but a nurse put her hands on my shoulders and said something I couldn't quite hear. Riley, Riley. Her voice got my attention. You're recovering from a big surgery. Lie down, relax and I'll check your stats. I yelled, where's my baby, and tried again to sit up, even though it hurt so much to move. He's fine. He's with his father, the nurse said, giving me a hint of a smile. I lay back on the mattress and took a deep breath. He's okay. I didn't think he would be. I remember my waters breaking and a world of pain coming crashing down on me. Mason was so shocked that he couldn't move, so my friends jumped into action all around him. Jake called me an ambulance from Mason's phone. Amber got me up and kept me calm. Sierra packed some bags for the hospital, and Raven tried to make Mason feel better. I don't remember much else, except the trip here. Every little bump in the road made me feel like I was having another contraction. I looked up at the nurse, who was busy with my paperwork and gathering medical supplies. Your baby is stable, she said. For now. That didn't sound very good. She put a blood pressure wristband around my arm and started to pump it until it was very tight. I said, for now, and my stomach dropped with fear. He's in an incubator cot on the NICU unit. He was born 11 weeks early, but he came out crying, which is a good sign. He needs help breathing, but he's stable right now. Things can change quickly with babies this young, but for now he's doing really well and getting the best care. Hopefully, as the days go by, he'll keep getting better. I tried to get up again because I wanted to see him. Riley, you can't move yet. You just had surgery a few hours ago and you're on a lot of drugs. I'll get you a wheelchair and take you down to see them, but first I have to check your stats. What happened? We had to do an emergency cesarean section to make sure your baby boy was born safely because your placenta ruptured and your waters broke. You lost a lot of blood during the surgery, and we weren't sure if you were going to make it. Obviously, your baby has inherited his strength from his mommy. She smiled at me, but I didn't say anything because I felt too guilty. I felt bad for complaining about my pregnancy, for how uncomfortable it was to share my body. How selfish was I? Your husband has been quite the meddler. She smiled at me and flicked my drip machine a few times. What? I asked, my voice showing how mad I was at myself. Yes, I think he's been making things hard for the nurses on the NICU unit. He's very protective and very demanding. I thought to myself, yes, that sounds like Mason. Epilogue. Mason. I looked at her more closely. The commander is the name of the man who has been taking care of your baby. What? I sat up and gasped for air. Riley. I saw Mason in the corner, holding a small blue bundle in his arms. You're fine, Riley. You're really high right now and you're going in and out of consciousness. I pushed out in a hoarse voice, the commander. He's not here, I wouldn't let him near us. SHHH, look. He whispered as he moved closer to my bed and lowered his arms so I could see my baby's face. He carefully put him in my arms. This little baby had tubes in his nose and fine, dark hair on his head. He was the best. I began to cry. I pointed out the sweetest parts of him and said, he looks like you. His button nose, the way his face looked like it was blowing in the wind, and the way his eyelashes fluttered with his dreams. Mason said, he looks like you, he's a mix of us both. I laughed. His face looks like a prune. It was almost too big for him, and it was all wrinkled and new. I wanted to smother him with love because he smelt like a baby. We can only hold him for an hour, but he's doing well and is strong. He has to stay in his incubator cot. He doesn't have a name. After meeting him and learning about everything he's been through, a name seemed very important. He ought to have a name. Yeah, he does, Riley. Mason looked a little nervous and chewed on his lip a little. They wanted to know what to call him, and you've been awake and asleep for 2 days. I named him Eddie because it means strong, and he is. I looked down at my lovely little boy and smiled. I think my happiness was so bright that people on the other side of the world could see it. Hi Eddie, I'm your mum, and I'm going to take great care of you. You'll have a lot of toys, a lot of friends, and a lot of people who love you very much. I looked up at Mason and saw that he was watching me closely, his eyes full of love for his new little family. I can already tell that your daddy is going to be very protective of you because he loves you so much. But don't worry, I'll help him with his people skills so he doesn't scare away people who want to get close to you. Mason asked, aren't you scared, with real interest? Doesn't it scare you that we are in charge of his whole life? Of course I'm scared, but I've already built the foundations. I love him, so I'll just go from there. He was quiet, lost in his own thoughts. What if I'm not good enough to be a father? The doubts that his father put in his head were clearly bothering him. What if I let him down or don't meet his expectations? Don't listen to those bad thoughts, they are spoken in your father's voice, Mason. You will be the best father. He abused and manipulated you mentally your whole life, but now you can break that cycle. You can learn from our son that you are enough and always have been." He nodded, and it was clear that he was holding back a lot of feelings. I think his eyes were full of tears that he wouldn't let fall. "Yes, I hope so." That was all he could say, and he said it in a broken voice. "Please let me put him back in his cot so he doesn't get cold." He put him back in his incubator and held his small hand through the holes in his cot. Mason's hand was so big and strong compared to his junior's that it was almost funny. "Are you sure you want to leave your job as lieutenant?" I was scared to hear what he had to say. Mason has only ever known how to be a lieutenant, live on the boot camp, and give orders. He was thrown into the deep end without a paddle all of a sudden. In a split second, his life changed into something he wouldn't be able to recognize. A father, a partner, living in the suburbs somewhere. I knew that he would have to make a lot of changes to give us the life he promised. Not at all. I don't regret becoming a father, I don't doubt my choice to leave my job, and I want to share my life with you more than anything else. He kissed me softly and pushed my hair back from my forehead. "That ring, my mother's ring, should be on your finger, Riley." I smiled more because I had never felt so complete, happy, and stable in my life as I did right now. I was always a loose cannon, and no rules or even the law could stop me. I was just a criminal on a path of destruction. He was the lieutenant, ruining himself to fit someone else's idea of perfect, but he never felt good enough. Who would have thought that those two things that are so different would fit together so well? It was easy for us to plan. We would raise Eddie at boot camp until my sentence was up, and then we would leave without looking back. Just the three of us, the criminal, the lieutenant, and our beautiful baby boy, start over somewhere else. Together, we march on.